Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to the next episode of the Perfectly Imperfect Spiritual Podcast. I am Marta the Medium, and this is a space for gentle truth, deep healing, and conversations that honor both the human experience and the unseen threads that hold us. Before we begin, a loving note: today's episode includes grief and the loss of a child. Please listen in the way that feels most caring for you. You are welcome to pause, breathe, or come back at another time. My today's guest is Carla Kaufman Sloan. Hello, Carla. So
Hello.
nice to see you. I'm going to introduce you properly and then we'll dive into this conversation. So, Carla Kaufman Sloan never expected to become a medium, but after the sudden passing of her 7-year-old son, Calder, she began receiving signs so clear and so persistent that she could no longer ignore them. What began as an unimaginable grief slowly unfolded into an ongoing relationship with her son, one that led her into intuition, trust, and an entirely new way of living. Today, Carla is a practicing medium who helps others connect with their loved ones in spirit. Her path was not easy or expected, it was built moment by moment through surrender, presence, and a deep remembering that separation is an illusion. Carla, once again, welcome. I am so honored to have you here.
Oh my goodness, I'm so thrilled. It was so exciting. I mean, that Calder came through before we even started to you. And that just made me feel like he is always blessing these moments, right? He's always letting me know he's present, even though that was to me the furthest thing from my mind because I came from a very skeptical background. I grew up in New Orleans. I was always having fun. I went into television. I went into game shows. I worked for Judge Judy. And so to me, and reality TV, which is the furthest thing from reality, I'm sure we all know now. But so for this to happen to me, like at the very beginning, Marta, I was in such deep grief. I just didn't think I would ever get out of it. And it was almost like a children's fairy tale. Like he kept putting out breadcrumbs for me. Like I would
Mm,
follow a step and something would
mhm.
happen. But in the beginning, I didn't really understand. Like it wasn't penetrating. So he actually went to my husband and made sure my husband got a reading with a medium.
Okay.
This man AJ Barrera, who's in Los Angeles, but we're in Miami, so it was all over the phone. And luckily, I think it was before Zoom a little. Yeah, it was before Zoom really took off because it was before COVID. It was a long time ago. And my husband has never had a reading with a medium or even understood that world at all. I had at least watched TV shows about mediums,
Mhm.
but he had this reading and he didn't tell me.
Mm.
But luckily, he had the recording. So after a couple of days, I think Calder was probably pushing him, let mom listen to the reading. And it kind of gave me a little bit of hope that could this be real? Could a stranger be communicating with my son? Not even in person with my husband, but over the telephone?
Mhm.
As you know, Marta, of course, that's how we all communicate now. It's all a huge collective consciousness. So that kind of put me on my path.
I love it. Well, do you think you could tell us more about Calder? What do you want people to know about him and the essence he carried? Who
Oh,
was Calder?
I feel like you can. I know now you have felt his essence. So Calder was a 7-year-old kid. So he and his brother Caleb's was is 2 years younger than him, and they were. If anybody out there has boys, you know what boys are like. They are wild. They were extra wild. My friends were like, here they come. They would just like run and have high energy and they would have fun. And we were laughing all the time. Like Calder always wanted to laugh. He had this huge laugh that I could still hear sometimes when he wants me to. Thank goodness I have tons of videos that I always can go back to. But he was always super high energy. And from a time when he was little, people used that term that I never understood what it meant, but they called him an old soul, even though he was this hyperactive kid, like all over the place. But he could then completely calm down and focus on someone and be very loving and caring and then go back to being a wild boy. It was so fun. And of course, I've had years now to reflect on he was only with us for 7 years and 7 days. So I have turned over all the moments in my head so many times because I've often wondered, like they say that things happen because we signed a soul contract, which was the hardest thing for me to ever even understand or comprehend. But I truly feel like he is a light. He is still helping people.
And how has your relationship with Calder evolved throughout the years, like since he has crossed over? And maybe you would like to share about different signs that he's been leaving you so that you can maybe, well, I don't want to say convert non-believers, but if there's anyone who's listening or watching that would like to be more aware of those signs and symbols, if you'd like to share anything.
Sure. Well, I will tell you, I was one of those people. I did not believe. I didn't have any reason to believe. I think, like all spiritual awakenings, they don't happen until you need them or until you've come to that point in your own evolvement where you suddenly are like, there's something more here. But so many parents have told me, I've met, of course, now I hang out with all these parents who've lost children, and they have told me that a lot of them knew and told their children or said, I'm going to go find my child. I still know he's out there. But for me, it was the opposite. I had no idea that I could connect with Calder. I was so deep in my grief. It was just, I couldn't get out of it. And he slowly started showing me signs. And some of them I couldn't even understand. Like I would be falling asleep at night and be in that meditative state right before you drop off. And I would see his lips as an image coming towards me, not his whole face, just his lips. And it would wake me up because I would just be like, not know what it was, but I could feel the energetic push towards me. And then I'd wake up, but I didn't know that was him until years later. And then slowly he started sending me default signs. He would send me dragonflies all the time. There's a story in the book Signs that Laurel Jackson wrote. She's a medium in America about one of the stories of when Calder first came. And I first got a dragonfly. And then when I was sitting, and then I had medium readings, of course. And then I also had a moment where she said in a reading for me, Calder's going to send you a deer. And she was kind of like, okay, I don't know what that means. She's going to send you a deer. He said he's sending you a deer. So we'll just go with that. And then she went on to finish the reading. And so I didn't really think of it again. And then that weekend, my husband and I started driving down to Key West, and we didn't even know there were deer in the Keys, but there's this area where they have these tiny deer called key deer, and we had never seen one. My husband had been driving down the Keys for 20
Mhm.
years. He had never seen one. I didn't even know about them. But as we were on the drive and it was late at night, he suddenly goes, "Oh, look at that. There's 4 key deer on the side of the road." And I was like, what? Like, I had not even told him about the reading because he wasn't as into it, even though he was the first one to get the reading, and it still made him very sad if I brought up
Mhm.
anything about Calder being dead or being able to connect with him. But the fact that I didn't see the deer, like, I burst into tears. And
Mhm.
he was like, "What is happening? I just said there were deer on the side of the road."
Mhm.
And so I explained the whole thing to him. Now we're like 10 minutes down the road, and he's like, "Well, would you like me to turn around? We can go see the deer." And I said, "No, no,
Mhm.
that's okay." But Calder made sure by the end of the weekend I had an experience with a deer.
Mhm.
By, like, I was waiting for Chris to come out of a restaurant, and I was sitting in the parking lot in the car with our younger son Caleb, and just sitting there, and I could see at the end of the parking lot these bushes start to shimmy, and
Mhm.
there, out of the bushes, came a deer, and it started walking towards me, and I thought, "Oh my gosh,
Mhm.
is this happening? Is it really happening?" And then it got closer and closer, and I got out of the car. I was worried I was going to scare it away because, deer are skittish. But I get out of the car. It does not get scared away. It walks directly up to me, and I put my hand out, and it put its nose right in my hand. And that moment just broke me open because I thought, if I can get a message, like a precognition that something's going to happen, and Calder makes it happen,
Mhm.
there's got to be something to this. And I jumped in with like a little kid. I jumped in full force and just devoured everything I could about connection and mediumship, and it was just so beautiful.
Thank you for sharing. Well, I have different questions going into different directions.
Sure.
I'll start with one. Well, I want to talk a little bit more. If you can talk a little bit more about grief. Like, first of all, like this aspect of grief. How can anyone who has lost a child survive that initial stage of grief where you feel what you've described, like it's the end of the world, I can't cope? Like, what advice would you give
It's
to
really,
other parents?
first of all, I would tell other parents, if you can be nice to yourself, like, really, um, it's so hard because, especially, I'll speak to being a mother. A mother's number one marching order, a mother's number one rule for themselves is to take care of their children at all costs, right? You
Mhm.
feel like that. You want to protect them. You would jump in front of a bullet for them. You would do anything. So you go through this period where you have all this guilt and blame. And if you can find a book or find a way to get out of that repetitive cycle by being saying that it isn't your fault, it isn't something that you did, you just, it'll ease your grief. It's really hard because you also get into a cyclical thought process of, what if? What if I had been there? What if I had
Mhm.
jumped for Calder? He was electrocuted in our home swimming pool, and I wasn't home. So the
Mm.
amount of guilt I put on myself for years was debilitating and added to my grief. But if you can stop the what if cycle and just feel the pain, which is horrible, and feel it and try to release it, that's the best thing you can do is just, and it's like, I would say for me, it was like having an illness.
Mm-hmm.
I could not get out of bed. I had people who would come to my house and take me out for a walk, like they were walking an old lady who didn't have her senses anymore. Like, let's go out for a walk. But anything you can do to kind of re-engage your body and get out of your bed and, slowly but surely return to, I mean, you'll never return to who you were, but at least return to the living. And that's really helpful. But the most important thing is not to completely annihilate yourself.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And what advice would you give to those who are witnessing someone's grief? Because I've seen so many people disappearing or not knowing what to say in this. So, what do you think would be helpful if there's anyone listening, watching that would like to support those who are going through the grief process? What they can do?
Well, this is interesting because I actually didn't necessarily know this intuitively, but then I started to recognize that people, it depends on who it was. Like, of course, you have friends who fall away because they can't look at you, because they can't handle your pain. So, for people who want to support a parent who's lost a child specifically, just showing up is a big deal. You're not going to be able to say anything that will help the parent. You're not going to cure their grief, but your physical presence and just letting them cry or talk about their child. I used to just talk about Calder. We were just here. We were just doing this, and it's hard for people to hear, but if you can just be present in a loving way, that's the most important thing for anyone in grief.
And for those parents who would like to start receiving signs and symbols from their children on the other side, what advice would you give them if there's anyone who's still in this deep grief state and thinks like, oh no, I can't really pick up on anything, like what they can do to start receiving communication from their children?
Well, first of all, it's so fun when you are first. It's still fun to me today to get signs from Calder and a reading from another medium and knowing Calder's coming through. So it really does lighten your grief. So the way I started was I live in Miami, so I would go to the beach, but you can go anywhere in nature and just take those moments to be quiet. You may be crying when you first start, but just take a few moments to calm your nervous system and really focus on your child and say, I really need to know you're with me. Please send me a sign. But it's better if you can be specific. Because I would say, please send me a dragonfly. And I have to tell you, for years, dragonflies landed on me. I would be going to the park. I would be in a swimming pool with hundreds of kids around me. And my sister-in-law would be like, there is a dragonfly on your head. It just won't. Like, even though the kids are splashing. And I was like, oh, that's Calder, letting us know he's around. Like, he's making sure we know he's in the pool with us, too. It's just so fun. And actually, most recently, Now I just love to hang out with mediums, Marta. So feel free to come to Miami or I'll come visit you. But I was most recently hanging out with my friend Rosie Sapiro, who's an amazing medium, born, bred, like knew from the day she was born, she was a medium. So I went to be with her for a weekend. And on my way there, I said, and she had a connection with Calder from the beginning. But on the way there, I said, Calder, let me know you're with us this weekend by showing me a blue dragon. And I thought, after I said it, I was in my head. And after that popped into my head, I thought, a blue dragon? Where did that come from? Like, I didn't even know where it came from. And so she picked me up from the airport, and lo and behold, we went out to dinner. And then she said, Carla, let's go to this crystal shop I love. And I said, of course, I love crystals. Mm-hmm. So we went to the crystal shop, and it was huge. It was 2 rooms. And, you know, there's so much energy in there, and I was overwhelmed. And I went into the back room without her, and I was looking at all the shelves, and on the shelf that I walked up to, there was a blue dragon sitting there on the shelf, as if to say, hello, I know, I am with you. I can do whatever. And it was so exciting. I told her about it, and she said, of course that happened. And then later that weekend, we were doing a joint reading for a mother. And she was on Zoom like this, and she was wearing a necklace. So you can't really see my necklace. Mm-hmm. So it caught my eye, her necklace. So I leaned in. I said, can you hold up your necklace to the camera? And she did. And of course, what was it? A blue dragon. She was wearing a blue dragon on a necklace. I was like, thank you. It's just beautiful.
Could you tell a little bit or a lot about how your own mediumship path developed? Because not only you're communicating with your own son, you're now helping other grieving parents to connect with their own children.
Yeah. So I started, in the beginning, I just wanted to connect with Calder. I just wanted him with me all the time. And I found out through the process that he is with me all the time, or anytime I want to call on him. And so I just started reading. And I have another friend, a close friend, who's a mother who lost a son. And we're connected forever. Her son, who she lost, name was Caleb. So my younger son, Calder's little brother, is Caleb. So when we met, we were sure the boys had put us together. And so she said right when COVID happened, she was really into all this. We went to the Omega Institute. I kept going to different workshops, like trying to figure out how I could expand my relationship with Calder. And then COVID happened, and one of the teachers that we had heard about, Suzanne Giesman, who's like one of the 100 most spiritual people right now, was doing an online course. I think it was her first online course with the Shift Network, maybe. And she was teaching mediumship on Zoom in a classroom. And we thought, let's see what this is all about. And lo and behold, we were doing little steps. And slowly but surely, we started to both connect. And it was amazing. It's just, it's something you have to learn the different steps for, but once you trust that it's going to happen, it's like an energy waterfall. It just washes over you. And she had very specific information, though, that she would teach you how to calm, like I was saying about sitting in nature, calm your nervous system down, regulate your breathing, open your, she's very into the chakras. So she was like, open your chakra path, especially your crown chakra to the other side, and see what happens.
What have you learned from Spirit? What have you learned from Calder about the other side?
Wait, I'm going to tell you that, but I just remembered another story I have to tell you.
Yes, of course, of course.
So I was so skeptical in the beginning of this that after my husband got that wonderful reading I was telling you about, he said at the end, can you do a reading for my wife? I think she could really use this. Like, she's having trouble getting out of bed. And that medium AJ said, well, why don't you play this recording for her and see if she's still interested? I heard in my deep grief and not so a little bit out of whack thought process, I said, oh, he doesn't want to give me a reading, I'll get a reading. And I went on the internet and found out he was doing a mediumship gathering with some other people in Virginia. Now, I haven't left our home or the bed much for months. And the next morning, my husband wakes up and I'm like, I just booked a ticket. I'm going to Virginia for a mediumship conference. He was like, what? So I did that, and I used a fake name, and I paid everything in cash because I was trying to make sure no one knew who I was. Like, I was so crazy. And I went to this conference. And of course, it was nice people like you, Marta, like all these people just learning how to meditate. Some of them were already working mediums. Some of them were new. And he would do like a seminar and talk about meditation. And I thought, okay, all right. So no one here seems to be doing anything to trick people. And then he would do a gallery reading every day before lunch. And so I would sit there like wanting Calder to come through. But, you know, everyone on the other side can see the timeline and see what's happening and is much more thoughtful about how things should go. So for 3 days, I did not get a reading from Calder. And I was devastated. But I couldn't tell anyone because I was undercover. No one knew who I really was. And then right before the lunch break on the last day of the convention, AJ said, hang on, everybody, sit back down. I have one more spirit who's here. And I know it's a little boy because he's pulling on my pants leg. And he proceeded to give a reading from Calder that undid me because I had wanted it so much, but I didn't want to tell myself that. So I pretty much disrupted the whole conference, like sobbing, and all the other mediums were like coming around me, and then I confessed, and it was this big thing, and I'm sure they still talk about the crazy lady who came to the medium convention. But it was another eye-opening experience that just made me realize this is the most to me healing modality out there for grieving people, to have that connection. So your other question was what have they taught me from the other side?
Yes, and about other side, anything that you would like to tell people who are new to mediumship, people who have never experienced communication with the other side.
Yeah. Well, I have to tell you, it's funny. In my hometown where I live, there are some people who are open to it, but most people I have known since I moved to Miami are not open to this idea. Maybe slowly but surely, now that I'm out there, they're starting to come around. But so I used to talk to people about it, and they would be, I would say the biggest thing that holds people back is fear. Like, we're doing something against God, or we shouldn't be doing this. or we're hurting people by talking about their deceased loved ones. And of course, there's the people who are actually out
Mhm.
there that aren't real, that
Mhm.
are giving us a bad name. But
Mm.
mostly, I feel like if we can all just keep spreading the word and shining the light, then eventually people come around. I actually sat across from a woman, Marta, who said to me, this was really early on when I was just like, have you ever had an experience? And we sat down to have coffee, and I said, have you ever had this experience where, and I gave her some thing like you felt like your loved one was coming close to you, and she goes, I don't believe in that, so let's talk about something else. And I was like, uh-oh. But funny enough, 2 months later, someone in her family died, and she was in the hospital room, and she experienced that person having a connection with someone on the other side. So she saw it with her own eyes, and she called me. I give her credit. She called me and she said, I think I've changed my mind. I
Mm.
saw someone talking to their dead grandparents as they were crossing, and it was very real. And I thought, oh, good. Yay. Now you know. Did
Mm.
I answer your question?
Oh yes, yeah. I don't have any specific expectations. Yes. What's popping now into my mind is the importance of. I think you've used that word before. I've seen the word surrender, of surrendering, like letting the control. Like if you can talk a little bit more about the importance of being in the present moment, but also what does it mean for you to surrender or and.
That's a great question because for the longest time, I didn't even realize what a control freak I am until I started this work and started meditating and connecting with the other side, because I came from a very fast paced world where, and people still say this to me, oh, I could never meditate. I have too many things going on. I have too many
Mhm.
thoughts in my head.
Mhm.
I can't do that. And I was of that mind until I discovered it was the only thing that brought me relief from the grief. And I feel like since then, I do meditate as much as I can. I would love to meditate every day, but being able to get to that quiet place inside you and letting
Mhm.
everything come to you as opposed to looking for it, I think is
Mm.
an important part of surrender. I feel like when I do my best readings, I am following what the spirit, the loved one, is telling me, because they are the ones who want to deliver the message. So if I can just give the information as I'm getting it, as opposed to, having a list like, what's your name, what's your relationship,
Mhm.
like that,
Mhm.
and just being okay, because they are so. I was actually just listening. Have you ever heard of the telepathy tapes? Do they have that where you are?
Well, I still have not listened, but it's been recommended to me because one of my children is on autism spectrum, and yeah.
Oh, you should.
But
Yeah.
yes, I've heard. So I still have not dived into that, but I know the concept and I've heard about it.
So there was one episode where um, one of the moms was saying, so her nonverbal or autistic child would communicate with her telepathically. And she was explaining it. And I was like, oh, it's exactly like mediumship. She would say her child would not give her words, wouldn't be
Mhm.
like a sentence. Her child would project a scene into her mind, which is what we get, right? When we're
Mhm.
doing the readings, you get a fully formed it may start with a teacup, but then it opens up so that you see the table and why they're showing you that and who they are. And it's like this full picture instead of just Marta told me that she's your aunt. It's more a full experience. And I thought, that is so cool. These nonverbal autistic kids are able to project what they need into their parents' mind. One of them can project music, and his mom writes down the lyrics so that he can then make his music. It's very similar, right, to that surrender.
I love it. And the fact that you've mentioned about the existence of telepathy that so many people would dismiss or never think about, because of course we've got the verbal language, but there is, well, we are souls. We communicate in a, well, it's in a non-verbal, I want to say, way through other means. And I think it's so important to acknowledge that way of communication.
I agree. And I didn't even realize, again, because I wasn't open to this, when Caleb was young and we were after Calder died, he was so, like, we had become so enmeshed. He could read my mind, but I just thought it was like, oh, a coincidence. I'm thinking of this song. He starts singing that song. Like, it didn't occur to me that he was actually picking it up from my, energetic field. And he was just like, because he was so attuned to me, because it's so hard for kids to see parents in grief. And so he was always tuned into me and I was tuned into him, and it kept happening. And I didn't realize it till I was with another mother who told me the same thing. She goes, the wildest thing happened. I was in my kitchen thinking about a song, and my daughter came in singing the song from another room. And I thought, oh, all the kids can do it. They can all do it before they're put into school and they're told this doesn't exist, right?
And then we shut those abilities until maybe some of us decide, or maybe life decides to open up that awareness. And could you talk about how you've been supporting your son through grief? How can parents support their children?
Well, it's interesting because, first of all, there's an amazing camp in America called Experience Camps. And through our foundation, we created a legacy fund there. And it's for children who have lost a sibling or a parent or someone close to them. And they go there for a week. And it's like summer camp, but they talk about grief, and they have these amazing counselors, and it sounds like it would be sad, which I'm sure parts of it are, but the kids come out feeling so relieved and so seen and so much better, and they don't have to be with their parents for a week, so they've also relieved of that burden of seeing especially in the beginning when you can't help it. You're just crying all the time. And your child is like, I don't know what to do with this parent who's crying. I'm the one who's supposed to be crying, the parents. So it teaches them how to deal with that. But I would say it also changes. Like the younger they are, it's more of it just doesn't make sense because they have no concept of death. And then as they get older, it changes. So as my son has gotten older, we talk about it all the time. I mean, I talk about this work now, but we talk about Calder all the time. We have pictures of Calder. There's one behind me. I don't know if you can see it. That's Calder and Caleb. Like we have pictures all over the place. Our foundation is named after both of them because we want Caleb to know he had a brother. And look, it's hard for him sometimes still, even 11 years later, to suddenly be an only child even though we know very well Calder is with him and around him, it's not the same as having your brother you're sharing your bedroom with. So just being open and letting them talk about it, making sure they know it's not a secret. For a long time, it was, shh, don't tell people. It's a secret. And I was like, it's not a secret. Everyone knows. You can't hold it inside. But I feel like that's them trying not to be constantly seen as the kid whose brother died, right? They don't want to be labeled that way. So you have to learn how to teach them to integrate it so they feel comfortable. They don't feel like a victim. They just feel like, yeah, this is part of my life. It's hard. It's really hard. I'm saying it like it's so easy, but it's a lot.
And what have you heard from Calder? Or what do you think? Or I keep hearing, what have you heard from Calder? What's Calder's legacy through this foundation and through his story that has touched so many people? What does he want people to know through his
Well, I
story?
feel like first of all, he's always present. If we ever do an event, he makes his presence known. Like the very first event we did, he had ladybugs landing on people. Like one landed on my best friend, one landed on me, and he always makes his presence known. But I feel like his legacy and our foundation really is about kids and supporting children in grief, supporting children who may not have the means for therapy, or even during COVID, we did food drives because there were so many children during that time who didn't have access to food. But I feel like, message is that kids are so much more than we give them credit for. From the time they're born through those 7 years until they're still connected to the other realm, and they're giving us information, and they're showing us by their actions that, we should all be kind to each other. And that was his big thing. He was such a sweet kid. I'll never forget that one of my girlfriends was sick. His best friend's mom was sick one day. And her little boy and Calder would get together and be like wild. And so we were over at their house, and she was kind of resting. And they were running around, and then Calder came over, and he said to her, "Are you okay? You seem like you're not feeling very well." Like out of the blue. She was like, "That's so sweet." Like she just didn't expect that from a little boy. And she just always remembered that. And I thought, they're very intuitive, right? They just pick up on things. And I feel like he still wants that to be true. But he also, that our logo for our foundation is adventure, laughter, kindness. Because he doesn't want people to forget you're here to experience and enjoy life. Like kids. Like really.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And well, finally, how can people work with you? What are your offers? What are anything that you would like to share in terms of any projects that you're creating?
Oh yes, I'm well, I'm on Instagram and Facebook is probably the easiest place to get in touch with me. My calendar is pretty full, so people try to book through my calendar and sometimes get frustrated on a mediumship reading. But I've also written a book because I feel like that was the most helpful thing to me. I devoured books when I was in grief. And it's interesting because I write about the day of the accident in great detail because I feel like in order to understand the transformation of this person sitting in front of you today who can talk and
Mm-hmm.
be happy and joyful, you have to go through my really low points. And then you'll see why it's so incredibly amazing to connect and be able to connect with people. And Calder was the one who brought me along this path. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's something I'm going to put out into the world very soon. And I'd be interested if anyone is listening and has a comment on that, if they would be able to read that. I feel like it's similar to, like, there's all these amazing books about the Holocaust, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning,
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. I feel like you kind of have to see the pain before you can see the new healing in the. And then I tell stories about all the crazy, how Calder was always with me and the signs, and then slowly but surely how I became a medium and how I've had readings here at my house with 20 people. And it's always, Marta, it's always amazing, right? When you have
Mm-hmm.
that connection, it's beautiful, it's fun, they're funny. It's not just all grief and sadness.
Mm-hmm. And this is so important that you are, well, acknowledging and adding that you can grieve, but you can also experience joy and laughter, and that it's not just one thing, and it can be everything at once, or maybe one or the other, and it can keep coming and going. And yes.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Like a roller coaster.
What what's the final message or a couple of messages that you would like to leave the viewers and listeners with?
I just want to say that I'm so grateful that I've been able to open my mind to something bigger. And I feel like the biggest message from the other side, and I'm sure you will agree with me, is that we're all connected. Everything we do somehow affects other people in a good way. I mean, I want it to be in the most positive, good way. Sometimes it's not in a good way, but we have to understand that what we do affects other people. And that message of kindness is so important. Like, even, in the harried craziness of our lives driving. I remember listening to Wayne Dyer once say, if you're in your car and you're getting angry, you need to really think about what's going on, because that's the first sign that you're not centered, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you're going to get to the place you're going, even if someone cuts you off. So you just have to recalibrate and come back to center. I'm paraphrasing him. He said it much more eloquently. But I really do believe that we are all connected. And I've just had amazing stories that I write about, a lot of them on Substack. And I write a story every month about different experiences I've had with loved ones coming from the other side. Or I recently met another mother through Helping Parents Heal, which is for parents who have lost children who believe in the other side. It's
Mm-hmm.
very specific. So it's always sharing signs. And this one mother and I connected, and she was listening to that same podcast you were talking about before we got on, Marta, about grief and parents. And
Mm-hmm.
she's listening to it while she's walking. I wrote the story about this. And she texted me. She said, "Oh, I'm listening to you on the podcast right now." And then she looked down at the ground, and there was a penny on the ground. And she picked it up, and she looked at it, and it had Calder's birth year on the penny. And she was like, "What are the chances of this?" She didn't know it was his birthday. She then Googled it, and then she texted me. She's like, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "I believe it." He's out there. He's everywhere. So that's why I name my book Everywhere, because our loved ones are everywhere.
Hmm. Thank you so much, Carla, for coming to the podcast, for sharing your story, for sharing your beautiful heart with the viewers and listeners. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate you, and I love the name Perfectly Imperfect. I feel like that's a great life lesson.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you to all of the viewers and listeners. Goodbye, everyone. Thank you.